and I'm very happy to be here. Um, and I was explaining that I have positioned myself in the camera that you can't see the pile of unpacked furniture and stuff behind me, but we're getting there. We're getting closer. And I think it won't be next week. It's going to be a few weeks probably since before the plumbing and all this stuff is finished. But here we are, so I'm glad. And today I wanted to share with you, and I will after we sit, some of what happened yesterday at Inside LA, which was very momentous and wonderful. And so, for any of you, is any? Well, I'm not gonna. For any of you who may be here for the first time, welcome. Welcome to our Inside LA Sitting Group. Sorry you had to hear that whole conversation about last week since you weren't even here. But thank you, Anne, for your patience. And what we do here is we divide it roughly into thirds, where we sit first, we meditate. We call it sitting, but not everybody is sitting. Effie, for example, lies down because of a back issue. So, we just say sitting, but we really are talking about meditating, whether you're sitting, standing, or lying down. Walking, Jeff used to come and walk on his sort of treadmill. That's a little bit more difficult, but it can be done. And I mentioned those 4 postures because those are the 4 postures that the Buddha talked about as being ideal for awakening. And when you stop and think about it, sitting, standing, lying down, walking around, and walking around standing for movement, that really covers our entire life, which means any moment we can be present and mindful because, we're in those postures. So we'll do some meditating together, then I offer some teachings, and then we have a chance for some dialogue. So let's sit together, and while you settle into your preferred framework for your body, I'm going to get the bell. I'll be right back. So this is an unusual bell. It's a beautiful bell from Burma. And at the sound of the bell, I'll give a little bit of guided meditation, but mostly we'll sit in silence. So we begin by taking 3 deep cleansing breaths, breathing in the aliveness of this moment and breathing out. And one more time, breathing in and releasing any tension in the body as you breathe out. And one more deep breath in and out. And sitting together with the sounds of life around us, the sensations of aliveness within the body, and feeling the sensations associated with the movement of the breath in the body. Sitting together today with an intention for goodwill, kindness, toward whatever is happening within you, around you. Just being kindly present with life as it is, moment by moment, breath by breath. And just taking a few moments at the end of this meditation, a few minutes rather, to ground yourself in gratitude, just appreciating the simplicity of being present in this moment with all the gifts of life, the earth, the sky, the water, the creatures. Grateful for life in the form of you and me and all beings. So, good morning again, everybody, and welcome to our Inside LA Sunday Sitting Group. I am speaking to you from the unceded lands of the Chumash and Tongva indigenous people who were here long before us and who are the ancestors of this land of LA and the greater metropolitan area of LA. And specifically, I'm speaking to you from our new apartment in Marina del Rey, and it's a very poignant thing to be here. Not just because of the chaos of moving. I was showing everybody that there's still cartons and paper on the floor and everything, but just because not because of that, but it's very poignant for me because this apartment, it's on the beach. You can't really see, but I'm going to set it up in the future so you can definitely see out those windows behind me. I just kind of makeshift everything right now. Um, so it's actually right on the beach, and this apartment belonged to my beloved friend, who was also a benefactor of Inside LA, Butch Schumann, and um, he has, what do you call it, bequeathed this apartment to Human Rights Watch, which was his very favorite nonprofit to support, and which he introduced me to, and my granddaughter, who actually started a student human rights watch club at her high school. He was a very meaningful person in our life, who actually died Friday night, which was the first night that we slept here. It was so ironic because he lived just, where am I? Just actually, there's just one building in between him and me, and we planned to be neighbors and have fun together. And I have this place on loan, um, and I'm very grateful, very, very grateful. I never dreamed I would ever get to live right by the beloved ocean. Um, and of course, I have rent and expenses. It's not a rent-free gift, but it's an incredible blessing to get to live here. And Butch, oh, there's so much to say about Butch. I am going to do some kind of celebration of his life. Of course, his family is doing that this week, but I want to do a celebration of his life here. Um, and I'm going to invite everybody. Maybe we'll Zoom it. I don't know how we're going to figure it out. And I do want to apologize to those of you who arrived late this morning, for, if you were here last week, for the technical issues that did not allow me to see you or you to see the other participants. That's not so pleasant, and we'll do it better the next in-person meeting, which is August 20th at Inside LA. But in the meantime, I'm telling you about Butch because I'm sad and feeling really sad, and I'm very grateful. You know, that he was the most fun. He was the funniest man. You know, making jokes almost, almost literally until he went into a semi-coma. Um, our last words were actually kind of joking words, and he smiled, and he was just a wonderful Dharma lover of the Dharma, meditator. He would joke. I would always want him to come to Sunday sitting group when we were having it at um, the Olympic space. And he would always say, "No, I have my Sunday sitting group right here, right at home." And he allegedly was meditating and studying teachings while we were doing it. I don't know. He might have been sleeping too, um, but he really loved, we shared a deep, deep love of the ocean and being in the ocean. And so just want to offer a deep bow of gratitude to Butch. And to also share with you, we had a momentous occasion. I really haven't even had that much quiet time to um, sit with Butch's passing, because yesterday we call it a teacher authorization ceremony, but for Eric McCullum and Rosa Maria Segura. Rosa Maria was the director of our Insight in Action program until just a month or so ago. And Eric McCullum is on our board and he's the teacher of the South Bay community, the South Bay Sangha. He and actually now he shares that with Maureen Shannon Chapel. They share that group together. But both Eric and Rosa Maria made a lot of contributions of their time and love and energy to Inside LA and to their teaching. They're still continuing to teach there. It's not a goodbye. It's really more an acknowledgement of something that had already happened, whether we call it a Dharma transmission or a teacher authorization. These words evoke almost a kind of institutional or sort of sectarian, authoritarian. It's not about that. It's the transmission heart to heart of spirit, and the words, that whatever we call the ceremony, really don't cover what happens. But it was a beautiful day in Benedict Canyon, and there were about, I don't know, maybe about 50, 60 people in a huge circle, and uh, I had asked Rosa Maria to bring something from her culture. She's from, she and her family had to flee El Salvador. And they're so assimilated here, actually, that she found it challenging to think of what could she bring from her culture. And it challenged, being Rosa Maria, she took it as a kind of life koan, and it inspired her to reconnect with some indigenous teachings from sort of Mexico, Central America area. And she brought her teacher, Tataji, who did the opening and the closing. He did a ceremony for us, for our ceremony. It was wonderful. And it was wonderful for me because he really set the whole stage and did prayers to all the four directions and explained to us how to ground ourselves in the earth and connect with the ancestors and burn some tobacco. And it was a very powerful experience, I think, for Tata and for me. And we decided we're going to do some things together to bridge the indigenous world and cultures with our modern day world, where we really don't know how to get in touch with our ancestors and receive their love and support. And, you know, when I say that, you may think, oh, yeah, you know, I don't want to be in touch with my ancestors because maybe there was some um, you know, some, what would I call it, conflict or suffering involved in the parents, the grandparents, that lineage. But we understand that when people have passed away, all that conflict, all that trauma, all that whatever happened, it really dies with them. And what's left, you know, what's left is whatever loving intention was there. And if, anyway, ancestors can go back so many generations. Ancestors can include our spiritual ancestors, and they really do. For me, they can include whoever inspires you. So we want to do some teachings together around bridging these traditions. And I felt grateful to Rosa Maria for bringing him into our lives here at Inside LA. And and today I wanted to just talk a little bit about that. You know, what um, at one point he said to everybody, what calms your limbic system? It's a question that you might consider, like, what is regulating for you? What calms your limbic system? My first response was sugar, but of course, that's not the most calming thing ultimately for our organism. It's my first go-to. I was eating little Haribos before the ceremony because I really wanted it to go well, and it did. So I consider sugar a sweetener of life and a blessing in moderation, of course. But he was really talking about, you know, feet on the ground, really grounding ourselves in awareness of the elements. And there are teachings about the elements in Buddhist practice too, which some of you may know. And those teachings, they really do dovetail with the indigenous teachings in lots of ways because people in those days were the indigenous people of India. And if they themselves were some iteration of that lineage, they certainly brought some of the customs and traditions from that lineage into Buddhist practice, the practice of the Buddha, who never called it Buddhism, of course, um, back then. And we are, you know, we offer a bow to Buddhism, to the teachings of the Buddha, because those are the teachings that are the source for the teachings of mindfulness and self-compassion and the other more, what I call non-religious. Or it's so tricky because the word sectarian means that which is not sacred. And I really deeply believe that when we bring all of our presence and attention to the moment, any moment can become sacred. It can become profound. There's actually nothing that isn't profound when we look deeply and understand all the elements of it. Um, but I still call those teachings, I don't know, part of the mindfulness movement or something. Like you don't need to care about Buddhism or Buddhist practice or anything like that to benefit hugely from them. And so many people come to, for example, the mindfulness-based stress reduction teachings, and they come for reasons of high blood pressure or migraines or maybe some other kind of physical issue. They have no intention, particularly, of it being a spiritual practice. But so often, and you know this from yourselves when you sit and get to know yourself, especially over a period of several years, you begin to connect with that which is bigger than you thought. You know, you begin to connect with, sometimes we call it the big self or the true self, or we could just call it the energy of the universe, spirit, whatever. But it's an unmistakable, palpable dimension of our being. And we do these practices in part to have access to that dimension of our being. So, um, this is a quote from a wonderful Native American musician, author, teacher, poet, Lila June Johnston, who calls herself Lila June. And she says, I'm rewriting history and herstory along with many others because we need to reclaim our beauty and reclaim our dignity. And we need to know that we are not butt heads. We are beautiful and we've been through a lot. And the more people we liberate from shame and unworthiness, the more we are going to have on our side. And by our side, I consider it to be the side of awakening, the side of compassion, the side of wisdom, the side of goodness. And she said, the quicker we can, and the more we have on our side, the more warriors we have on our side, the quicker we can win our spiritual battles on earth. We can alleviate poverty, heal racism, and save our fellow species. All of that stuff depends on our humanity, remembering who and what we are really meant to be. And I'd like to read you a story. It's a story that is linked to the love and appreciation for all beings. And Butch, my friend who lived here for many years in this very apartment before he got a bigger one and bequeathed, it's not a big apartment. It's got a nice big front room, but it's a small apartment. But he got a bigger one and then he bequeathed this one to Human Rights Watch, loaned to me while I'm living here, taking care of it. But he had, I hope you don't mind if I tell this story, Butch. He had an infestation of cockroaches in his kitchen. You know, like you'd open a kitchen drawer and you'd see these little beings scuttle away. I really was encouraging him to clean up, but he didn't want to. He said, they are my relatives. They can live here too. And so I found this story, actually it was sent to me by a cousin of Jack's, that that I read to honor Butch's spirit and to share with you a different approach to life than maybe you might have. And it's a story written by Angela Pelster. It's called Honeychurch, How to Love an Ant Invasion. Ants invaded, it's kind of a long story, so bear with me. This is really like I'm just reading you. I would say a bedtime story, but of course I would like you to stay awake. Ants invaded our house, our first summer in Baltimore, the first year of our marriage. Your only marriage, my second one, when my kid became our kid. This house, our home. We watched the parade of ants, polite little soldiers marching single file along the kitchen baseboards in a thin and steady stream. You took a white sheet of paper from the printer, slipped it under their quick feet, then whoosh, like a magician in his tablecloth, you scooped them up off the floor and out the door. Scoop and flick, like magic, they were gone. until they weren't. Back again the next day along the baseboards, then moving in a line up and down the cupboard doors to the countertops. I saw them and sighed. But you, ever eager to guide any creature to safety, you scooped and flicked again, not wanting to harm any of them. I watched you with the ants, and I thought of that night in Iowa City when we met in my first graduate class, when we were both still new to each other. Sitting on my porch, feet up on the rail, deep into the night, we talked. I told the story of my life to the dark, to you, to your kind presence beside me, and you told me yours. I felt your heart turn toward me then a little, and mine to yours. Months before we arrived there together, we turned. A mosquito had sucked your leg while we talked. I saw it in the light of the street lamp. Its fragile and long-legged body made fat with your blood, and I slapped at it for you. Had we touched before then? I don't remember. I don't know why we would have, except maybe for a drink passed hand to hand, or maybe our fingers brushing, or a forearm touching. But even that, I think I would have remembered at that point. So our first touch was this slap, my palm against your leg, my defense of you. And then my hand pulled back and your blood was smeared against us both. More blood. Oh no. Oh no. Hold on. I've been having trouble with my printer. Hang on, I'm going to find the second page. Fear not, I have it here. Hold on. I'm so sorry. Maybe you can guess where this is going. It's a really great story, though. I want to read it to you. Here it is. Okay. Uh, so we're with the blood on his leg right now. More blood than seemed reasonable for such a small being. I remember it well, even now, these years later, the look on your face, your eyes filled with horror, and how you lifted them to mine in slow motion, and how you must have seen, what? My own face rapidly shifting from laughter to confusion, embarrassment. I only know what I felt and what I was trying to hide from you. You tried to rearrange your face for me. You didn't want me to feel badly because of it. It's okay, you said. It's okay. I know it's weird. It's okay. I'd never heard of not even mosquitoes before you. I hadn't ever imagined that much care extended to these smallest of annoying lives. Then 2 years later in Baltimore, our kitchen and the ants, in the butter, in the flour, even in the fridge, and somehow, miraculously, in the screwed shut jar of honey. I'd bought a bottle of ant killer to stop the rising tide of them. Please, you said, just give me a day. I'll figure out what to do instead. You told me the story of the summer you moved to Iowa City, 2 years before I arrived, and how your apartment came with a colony of ants that had built a home right in the middle of the living room floor, your tiny roommates that you hadn't asked for. You tried to scoop them out then, too, that day when you first unlocked your new door to find them waiting for you. But they were there again when you returned. A new mound built right where the old one had been. So you bought poison. You laid down a pile of it, knowing the ants would share their little packages of death with the rest of the colony and bother you no more. Except that they did. You woke in the dark your first night there, to quietness all around. You inside this new city, inside the new life you had just begun, and you thought of the ants, those scurrying bodies, hurrying their poisoned parcels home to their families, the queen, and how their collective self would die because of their lives of cooperation. And you were sorry for what you had done. The easiest truth in the world to understand, and maybe the easiest one to forget, is that nothing comes from nothing. Ants have been around longer than we have. They evolved somewhere between 140 to 168 million years ago, probably from early wasps. I know this now, but I didn't know it then. This means that ants lived alongside dinosaurs. They probably carried off food from their picnics too, and that ants survived what the dinosaurs couldn't when the asteroid hit. Ants survived what most of life couldn't. 75% of all species went extinct, but ants took up fungi farming. They've been fertilizing and tending their farms for 65 million years, while humans have only been at it for the last 12,000. Once there was a time when ants were small in number as well as size, but now there are 1 million ants for every human on Earth. Ants have a history and a home on this planet. Hang in there, everybody. We're coming to the point. In Baltimore, you made a plan for them. You placed a few dots of honey in the kitchen where they gathered, out of the way of our feet, and left a path along the baseboards and out the back door. Outside, you made a trail to a bowl of honey on the deck. Each day, you wiped another dot of honey from the kitchen and moved the bowl farther away from the door until you settled it in the shade away from our home. The kitchen was cleared of ants, never to return. So you called it Honey Church because of how they gathered around the bowl, kneeling and raising their tiny ant arms as if in prayer. Later, you showed me where they'd gone. It was the time of our own evolution, when the days ratcheted up one after the other with my ever-growing fear of the hurt you could do to me. Those early days when I thought I'd learned to trust you, but found that I couldn't, even though there was no reason not to. I couldn't rest in the goodness of our life together. I was only certain of its coming end, more familiar with the wildfire of fear within me than anything else. But nothing comes from nothing. I'd wake crying from dreams with your face on his and all the things he had done to me, my heart grinding between my teeth. I'd leave you in bed sleeping, slipping out to check your phone, your text, your email, the booze bottles, our bank accounts. So certain the end of my happiness had come again and again and again. I'm sorry, I can really relate to this story. I morphed into a little spy lying each night beside you. But after all my looking and finding nothing, after our arguments and shouting, my weeping and your wounding, I'd confess to my invasion. I remember your face then, too, all these years later, the hurt of it. I'm sorry, I said, I'm sorry. How you rearranged your face again for my benefit. It's okay, you told me after. You can do it if it helps. The morning you showed me Honey Church, you shook your head and smiled. So happy at the sight of their eating and praying. You crouched over them like a strange and benevolent God, refilling their dish, watching from the edges while I watched you watch them. Those tiny creatures so completely at our mercy. There are easier ways to respond to any invasion. Everyone else understands this. But not knowing the kind of hunger that moved them, you built a home for love of them anyway. So thank you for listening. I don't usually read you such a long story, but I love this story. It's a story about fear and lashing out and how we try to take care of our fear by either annihilating that which causes us to be afraid, or um, I certainly know what it's like to try to understand somebody you love who is an addict. I have been there, not to the extent that she did, but I've certainly searched pockets. Um, and his response, so loving. You can do it if it helps. You know, you could do it if it helps. And his response to the ant invasion, the invasion of privacy by his partner, Angela, and the ant invasion. So ingenious, so beautiful, not harming. I feel deeply inspired by this story, and I hope you liked it too. So this is the teaching I want to offer you today. Um, my heart is especially open today, partly because of our ceremony yesterday. You know, ceremony is for everybody to open their hearts, um, and also because of the weird coincidence, or is it, of Butch passing away the first night that we slept in his apartment. I don't know, but I do know that it's your turn now to offer any reflections you may have.
Hey, Trudy.